Thanks for joining us for this week's live Q&A. The theme today is how to save your hive from hive beetle attack. Now, in some parts of the world, like here, we have the small hive beetle, and that came into Australia almost 30 years ago. Other countries have had it for longer. It originated in Africa, and the African honeybee has learnt to deal with it. But Apis mellifera, which is the ones we have, the European honeybee, still has a bit to learn about the hive beetles, so they need a helping hand. And right now in this area, hives are absolutely being smashed by hive beetles, and it can happen quite quickly from a hive that seems okay to a hive that is being slimed out by beetle larvae. So what happens, and I'll show you what the beetles look like if you've never seen one, is the beetles enter the hive, and if the hive's not strong enough to really keep them under check, the hive beetles can take over. And we're getting a cascading effect here now because hives are dying out from Varroa, which is a new pest in this area. Hive beetles are finishing them off, and each hive that dies out, thousands of hive beetle larvae then crawl out of the hive and into the soil. And it may be as little as 3 weeks before they emerge again as a small hive beetle ready to go and attack another hive. So first thing to do, and a great thing to be doing at the moment if you've got small hive beetles in your area, it's a good thing to do anyway, but now that we're in a heightened state here on the east coast of Australia with both Varroa just coming in and hive beetles, we really need to stay on to trapping them and giving your hive a helping hand. So if I pull out this oil tray here, all we've done is put some cooking oil in here, and you can see how many beetles we're catching. And that's across all of our hives. So we're changing the oil now every 2 or 3 weeks and cleaning out thousands of hive beetles, which really does help your hive. But we're finding anything else you can do to really help your hives with hive beetle is an important thing to do at the moment. So we'll run through a couple of other options as well to trap beetles higher up in your hive. So you've got a pest management tray down there working hard for you, catching beetles. Then you've got various options you can put on top of the brood frames and so on. So we're going to both run through what you need to do to protect your hives from hive beetles if you have the small hive beetle in your area, and what you do if the beetles are getting hold and you're trying to save your colony from what's called a slime out, where it becomes a beetle nest instead of a beehive. And the bees at that point usually abscond. So we're seeing a lot of that around this area at the moment. The beetles getting too much and overwhelming the hive, and the remaining bees taking off and starting again somewhere else. So, and what you're left with is a hive to clean up. And we'll also talk about cleaning up the frames as well. So, this hive here was one that had a great functioning colony. It had a super on top, it had a lot of honey, everything was going well. Then something weakened the hive, whether that be Varroa, or perhaps the queen wasn't laying enough, the numbers were dropping, the hive beetles got hold, and the hive, we almost lost it. So now I'm going to run you through what you need to do to save your hive from severe hive beetle attack. So the first thing you might see as a bit of an alarm is you open your pest management tray and you see a lot of small maggots down here, which is the hive beetle larvae. Not to be confused with these larger ones, which are wax moth. Those large ones are wax moth larvae. But when you see a lot of the tiny little ones all wriggling around, that's showing you that they're dropping out of the brood frames, and those larvae have been worming their way through, damaging the brood, defecating in the honey and so on. And that will spoil the honey. But worst of all, it can be the end of your hive. So what you'll need to do, if you open the tray and you're seeing a lot of hive beetle larvae falling down into that tray, you need to get in there, so you use your super lifter, you open your hive, you have a look at the brood frames as soon as you can, and look for slimy, wet areas. Now this hive, we've already gone through the procedure in order to save this hive. Now, what you'll need to do is remove all of the honey and all of the pollen from the edges of the brood nest and remove the super. It's a little bit counterintuitive. You think, my hive needs stores, it needs pollen, I don't want to weaken it by taking those stores away. But if you don't, it'll be the end of your hive if the hive beetles are starting to slime the comb. So number one is take everything away except for a few functioning brood frames. So the remaining bees can ball or cluster right on those brood frames and really protect them from the hive beetles. So I'm going to put my bee suit on, we're going to pop the lid and just run through that again. Let us know how the hive beetles are in your area or whether you have them in your part of the world. So, taking the gabled roof off, and next we're taking off the inner cover. And what you're seeing here is another method you can use. Utilize everything you can if you're here on the east coast of Australia to trap beetles. This one's a folded over chuck's cloth. And what happens is the beetles get their spurs on their legs tangled in the fluff. Now, the bees have to, this hasn't been in here very long, the bees have to chew away at it and fluff it up a bit, and then the beetles start to get caught in it like that. It works well when the colony's bigger and you're putting it between two boxes, and eventually the bees will tear this up altogether, but in the meantime you can catch a lot of beetles. Unfortunately, you sometimes catch a few bees as well, so that's something to be mindful with the chuck's cloth method. There's other things like silver bullets or various different little hive beetle traps that go between the frames, a bit more labour intensive because you've got to get in there and clean them out a lot, but they do work well. And then there's also chemical traps that have fipronil in them, like apithor and so on, which can also be used against hive beetle. The pest management tray works very well, but as said, anything you do extra will help your hive. At the moment, where a lot of even beekeepers that have managed Varroa very well are losing a lot of hives to hive beetles. So get in there, give your bees a hand, and also make sure they don't have too much room to defend. So if I opened this hive and I saw that the brood frames were starting to take on a wet, slimy look, straight away I'd go, that is hive beetle. I'd look closer and you can start to see maggots moving around. You need to get out those frames. So what I did with this hive, and we did make a video about it to share, we haven't edited it yet, but basically I took away the frames from the edge. So if you're using naturally drawn comb, you can simply cut it out and chuck it in a tub, and then you can either burn that comb or you can just sink it underwater for 3 days, or you can freeze it. Any of those methods will kill the hive beetle larvae. So you're taking away typically honey on the edges, pollen on the edges, and you're cutting out that comb and you're putting it in your tub. Do that to the other side. Take away as much as you can, just leaving a few good frames in the middle. Could be even as little as one good frame left. You have to make that decision as the beekeeper, but there's no point in leaving a tiny colony with a bunch of frames to look after. It's just the end of that colony then. The flow frames, take them away. Brush the bees off, leave the bees here. Take the flow frames and ideally put them in a freezer. If they're still good, if the infestation hasn't moved up to the flow frames, you can put them back on later. If they have just started to lay but the larvae hasn't damaged the honey yet, the larvae will not damage the flow frames, but if it damages the honey, then it could spoil the honey, but if it hasn't quite yet, you can put it in the freezer for at least 3 days, and that means that will kill those hive beetle eggs and larvae. And then they can go back on a hive later. If it's later stage than that and all your honey's all slimy and full of the hive beetle larvae, then you'll need to get a pressure washer and blast the frames clean again. Put it on a flat surface and blast down the lines. Dry them in the shade and then put them away again till next your hive is strong enough. So there's a few methods there for cleaning up as well. So what we see here is a frame. Now you could take this away. There's really no brood in it. There's just a tiny bit of honey, and leave less area for this colony to defend against the hive beetle. And that's the method I've used to save many colonies over the years from severe hive beetle attack. And then when they have everything's under control again as far as the bees are concerned, the queen will start laying, the population will build up. So you do want the empty frames or blank frames with foundation in the edge, so that as they do get back on their feet and they start to expand, they can then start building again on these. And when they're filled all the way out to the edge again, you can then go ahead and put your super back on. Chime in any questions about the hive beetles, and sorry to those people that have lost their hive to small hive beetles. It's a great reminder to us all to really stay onto it, stay vigilant, catch them using your pest management tray. Check that every few weeks, clean it out, put some fresh oil in it, and use any other traps you can get your hands on.
So I've got a question from the Singing Cooks. That cloth that you had, oh, it's just blown away, I'll get it for you, we call it a Chuck's cloth. Just wondering what it actually is.
So this is just your standard semi-disposable dishcloth. It's called Chuck's. You get them at most stores, supermarkets and so on, and it just happens to be a fabric that when the bees chew it, it gets very fluffy, and it's the spurs on the hive beetle's legs that get caught in that fluff, and they eventually tire out and die. So it can work very well, but as said, it can also catch a few bees as well. So some pros and cons there, but putting them in between boxes is a great place for them, and will catch a whole bunch of beetles for you. Okay, keep the questions coming in.
Cedar, Matt wants to know, is it better to put in like blank frames, like our foundationless frames, or put them in with foundation after trying to establish the hive from an attack?
Either way, it just depends what you want to do. If you're putting foundation in, that's fine. If you're just using the comb guide, that also is fine. It's more about how you want to manage your hive. We don't need to have the bracing of a foundation sheet or waxen wire because we're not putting these frames in a centrifuge. So I just like to let them draw it themselves, but it's up to you. You can certainly use foundation sheets. Foundation itself won't cause any issues in terms of hive beetle larvae. They won't go for it. So it's fine if you want to put frames in with wax or plastic foundation on the edges in prep for when your colony's back on its feet and expanding again.
Right. Cedar, with that cloth that you were just using, does it matter that the bees are eating it, or will their honey become blue?
Okay, so does it matter? I guess it you know, eventually they're going to throw this out into the environment, which is not a great thing, and it's kind of disposable, which is not a great thing. I guess your oil trap's a bit more sustainable like that, because you can keep topping it up with cooking oil, which will biodegrade in a compost pile and so on. But it is a method that gets used quite widely in beekeeping, is the Chuck's cloth. So I wanted to show you that one. But yeah, it is true that the bees are chewing up this synthetic fibre and then throwing it out the front of the hive. It shouldn't affect your honey though. Bees are very good at separating. Look at that, beautiful. here's a frame that's been put in the middle. The bees have drawn it with their fresh yellow wax. This is great to see. There's a whole lot of brood, so this colony is starting to bounce back. We're not seeing any wet, slimy areas. So this is a successful hive beetle technique to save this hive from slime out. And it looks like this colony, it's got some nice brood on the other side too. It's got a few queen cups and even a queen cell, which is interesting. They might be looking to supersede the queen. There's a small little queen cell there because it's capped at the end. That's a queen cup, that's a queen cell. Once they have capped it, interested to know whether the other one's got a larvae in it. No, it is empty. So that's interesting in itself. Perhaps the hive has decided that the queen isn't performing well enough and they are going to raise a new one. It's beautiful, isn't it, to watch them build off the comb guides, just how they do and how they've always done it. Keeping it their natural ways, just from hanging the comb from a wooden frame. Okay. Keep the questions coming in. Today we're covering the small hive beetle, how to save your hive from hive beetle attack. Now, if you've got a severe case, just a quick recap. The way that I've found that's most successful is to take all of the edge frames away that just have honey and pollen. Ditch them, ditch any badly affected frames, leave just a few brood frames centrally in your box, pack the flow super away, trap the hive beetles, and fingers crossed your hive will bounce back from there. You could add another brood frame with nurse bees on it from another hive as well to boost numbers. And that method works quite well for saving hives. If you're too late, then it's more about cleanup. And your methods for cleaning up the frames are drowning them in a tub of water for 3 days, freezing them for 3 days, or burning the comb. In our case, we would cut the comb out, keep the frame, and then you could burn the affected slimy comb. Okay, here's another frame, bit of brood on it, good to see. So we're seeing a lot of brood, we're seeing healthy brood, which is great. Not seeing any areas that are covered in slimy hive beetle larvae. So it's good.
Right. Cedar, Alexandra is wondering, they'd heard that smoke from maybe eucalyptus could be helpful with things like hive beetle or cleaning out the hive. Just wondering if you've heard of anything like that, or would there be any other type of herb that could be good for smoking the hive to help with it?
Oh, yeah, I'm not too sure. We just tend to use what we have around, which is usually the garden mulch. But interested to hear what your thoughts or experiences are on using various different herbs, if you like, in the smoker. Look, here's a nice queen cell, a nice big one. That's capped. So this hive, for whatever reason, is raising a lot of queens at the moment. So they should have a young virile queen soon, assuming that the old queen is either bumped off or is about to be bumped off, I guess. Here we go. Just having a little look around for the queen here. And now that I've noticed the queen cells, I'm going to start looking down the cells for young larvae or eggs showing presence of a queen. So even if I don't notice her, is there any eggs down the cells? Perhaps this hive is already well underway with a supersedure, which is the term given for when the hive itself raises a queen to replace the current one. Okay, keep the questions coming in.
Yep, Cedar, our happy hounds and islands tuning in and just wondering, can't the bees kill off the beetles?
some bees display genetics which are promising, and they really chase them around and corral them, and some will even chase them into a corner, then propolyze over the top and entomb them. And they're all great genetic traits, but genetic evolution is slow. So the African honeybee has been with the small hive beetle for a very long time. It does all of that. It keeps the hive beetles under check for the most part. Now, Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, hasn't had it for that long, and you know, in Australia's case, it's only been for less than 30 years, and now we see that some hives are displaying those genetics and others just really do a poor job of managing the beetles, and the beetles run around and lay lots of eggs, and then it becomes a problem with the hive often absconding. So lessening the beetles is a great idea. I mean, just to put it in perspective, I've had hives that have never done anything about the beetles for years, and they get along just fine because the colonies are strong and the beetles are few. The tides have turned, the colonies are weaker with the varroa just moving into town, and every hive that dies out in the wild or in people's apiaries that hasn't been managed correctly as all of the beetles then gestating in the hive, the larvae worms its way out the front and into the ground and becomes thousands more beetles ready to attack the next hive. And it's been a cascading event. We're seeing 10 times as many beetles as we usually do. So at the moment, we really need to stay on top of the beetles. Varroa, yes, but even beekeepers that are doing a great job of keeping varroa numbers very low are losing a lot of hives to the small hive beetle. So the big learning is catch the small hive beetle, give your bees a hand at the moment in what is, in our area, probably the hardest season we'll ever have.
Yeah, thanks, Cedar. Now Brian's wondering, this is a good one, should you put the oil into the tray before you even find the hive beetles, just to stay on top of it?
Absolutely. If you're in Australia on the east coast here, your hive will have hive beetles. All hives do. So putting some cooking oil in the tray is a great way to catch a few of those hive beetles. Okay. And for those that were here at the beginning, I'll show you that. If we just open this pest management tray, slide it out, you can see how many beetles are getting caught right in that cooking oil. So it does work very well. Other people do use detergent in water. Quite a strong solution of detergent does also catch beetles because it blocks up the way insects breathe through their exoskeleton like the oil does. Now, it's got some pros and cons because it changes the humidity in the hive. A hive likes to keep their humidity in the 50 to 60% range most of the time. So putting a tray of water in there may make that harder for the bees, but it does do a great job of catching beetles as well, detergent and water. But that's why we use the oil. It doesn't evaporate like water does, and so it doesn't have that effect on the humidity in the hive.
Just while you were having those hive beetles out there, Seeds, we've got someone asking, like, what even is a hive beetle and what do they actually do?
Okay, the small hive beetle is a little black beetle, and you can see them there, or it might be a better example here on the chuck's cloth. Just to put it in perspective, there's my hand, there's the beetle. They are aptly named a small hive beetle. Now, originated in Africa, they evolved with the African honeybee for a long time, and the African honeybees keep them under check. Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, hasn't had so long with the hive beetles and does struggle a little bit to manage them at times when there is a lot of beetles and the climate is ripe for it with a lot of humidity. So if you've got warm, humid climate and hive beetles in your area and a lot of hives dying out from varroa, then beetle attack, finishing them off, you've got a lot of beetles then coming into hives. What happens is they'll prey on a weak hive. That one beetle can lay thousands of eggs. That beetle larvae looks like a little tiny maggot, if you like, and they worm their way through the combs. When it's starting to go south, what you'll see is that larvae falling through the screen at the bottom and into the tray below. So that is a telltale sign that you need to get in there, have a look, make sure your colony is either okay, or manage it like we have with this one by taking the edge frames away. Another thing is be responsible with a hive that's a dead out or slime out from hive beetles, because what can happen is thousands of, even tens of thousands of hive beetle larvae come crawling out of the hive into the ground, and in as little as 3 weeks they could be emerging as beetles ready to attack another hive. They can also lay dormant if the conditions aren't correct, or if it's too cold they can lay dormant for a long time, and they'll be out when conditions are perfect for going and really making a menace in beehives. So be responsible. If you have lost a hive to the hive beetle, there's a few different methods of cleanup you'll need to do, and it's not fun, but and sorry if this has happened to you, but what you need to do is take out your brood frames, cut out the affected comb, chuck it in a tub of water. There's a nice big black tub there. Anything like that will work well, where you put the comb, either chop out the comb and keep the frame, or you can put the whole frame in there if you like. You need to put a weight on top of it and fill it with water. You need them under the water for that hive beetle larvae to drown, if you like. 3 days or so, and then you can tip out that water, and then you've got the remaining frames to deal with, bury or compost, but keep them away from bees, keep them away from hive beetles that might want to reinfest and breed in those combs. So a better way might be to chop it out and burn that comb, and then it's gone. Or another way, if the frames aren't too badly affected and you want to actually keep it for resources for the bees, because bees do use a lot of energy recreating this brood comb. So let's say you wanted to keep that brood comb, it wasn't too badly affected, but you want to minimize the surface area for the bees to manage. You could shake all the bees off and you could put that in a freezer for 3 days or more, and that will kill the hive beetle eggs and larvae as well. A few options there in terms of cleaning up and in terms of hive beetle management. Best defense is a strong colony, or that's hard to do at the moment with this Varroa incursion.
So do hive beetle thrive, like you were saying? Obviously here we are in the northern rivers in Australia where it's hot and humid and subtropical, and the hive beetle are raging. Does that happen in all climates, and are hive beetles all around the world?
Drier climates, if you head just a few hours west over the Great Dividing Range, hive beetles for the most part aren't an issue. The climate is drier, the hive beetles don't manage to really breed up enough to be a problem. Now, colder areas don't seem to suffer so bad. It's the warm, humid climates that really seem to suffer from hive beetle. And I've spent a lifetime beekeeping not really worried about the hive beetle. Trap them occasionally when a hive's really weak, and that's about it. But it's a whole new thing this year with the levels of hive beetle we're seeing due to the unmanaged colonies dying out from weakened by Varroa and then finished by the hive beetle. So it's really a little bit specific to where we are here in Australia. However, humid climates with hive beetles do lose hives sometimes even before Varroa came. So getting on managing your colonies when they're weak and giving them a helping hand to catch the hive beetles is a great idea regardless.
Yeah, interesting said. We've got a couple of people, so we've got I'm not sure where this woman is saying that they don't really have the hive beetle, and she's got lots of different types of bees and wasps and doesn't have the hive beetle. And then we've got the happy hounds in Ireland saying thankfully Europe is free of them at the moment, but for the first time late last year they were found in some Italian hives.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know. We've got a situation in Europe. My father was speaking to some friends there, and they were really worried about the hive beetle coming in and saying, should we burn our hives and so on? And we're like, huh? All our hives have hive beetle. Why would you burn your hive? But they're not worried about varroa because they've had varroa forever and they might do something about it twice a year. We're all worried about varroa and not the beetles. They're worried about beetles and not varroa. So it's a little bit about what you have and where you are in, I guess, we're in the build-up phase, which is the intense varroa time, but that'll pass in the next year or two and things will become more manageable and the hive beetles will become easier again as well. Okay, keep the questions coming in. Great questions today.
Yeah, really good. This is one, it's not about the beetle, but Jazz is just wondering, Jazz would love to be a beekeeper and wanting as a beginner, and just wondering what hive would you recommend, Cedar, if they want honeycomb and honey at the same time?
Okay, honeycomb and honey. So any hive, any beehive you can collect honeycomb from, and it's a case, you can collect it from the brood box here. You'll find that the edge frames, which we don't have any of today because they've taken them all away to help the colony manage the hive beetle issue, but you can see the comb they're building there. This is in the middle of the brood nest, so they've got brood in it, but the ones on the edge will have a lot of honey. You can cut out some honeycomb and enjoy that, and the bees will be very quick to fill in the comb. You'll see some live streams of me doing that, where I'm cutting out a nice heart shape or something in the middle of the comb, straight on a cheese platter, and then the frame go back in the edge. So that's something you can do, especially easy with naturally drawn comb like I like to do. With the comb guide in the top, there's no wires or plastic foundation or anything here. You can cut out the beautiful shapes of honeycomb, the frame goes back in. Now Trace, reading out the questions, likes to put what's called an ideal box, which is a shallow box. And she uses it specifically for collecting honeycomb by putting that on top of the flow frame box. So you see here we have our brood box. Up here is my father and I's invention, the flow frames. Now that is fantastic for harvesting a lot of honey the easy way. If you want honeycomb as well, you can add another box on top of that dedicated to collecting honeycomb, or you might like to just pop the roof and collect honeycomb in this cavity up here by taking out this little cap here, putting a glass baking dish over the top of that and collecting honeycomb in that roof cavity. And that'll be wild freeform honeycomb, and that'll be fun to watch. After a while, as a beekeeper, you get sick of dealing with honeycomb and you appreciate the honey on tap invention here, where you can simply zero processing, honey's ready straight in the jar. So flow hives are great for collecting honey, as you said, and any beehive you can collect honeycomb from as well.
Great. Now this is a question from Maddie and Foster, and Maddie, I know you've left me a message in the phone, so I was going to call you back after this, but I can ask the question now to Cedar. Bees are doing really well, has the Flow Hive 2 Plus already done one split this season, but has noticed that her bees are chewing out of the brood box, creating a new entrance. There's lots of bees in the window, and so wondering, I guess why they're chewing out of the box, and should she do another split?
Okay, so it's a little bit genetic where the bees will chew the wood away and make extra entrances. Can get a bit annoying sometimes when you've got a colony like that, but often you don't necessarily have to do anything about it. The typical spots they might chew are by the entrance to make the entrance bigger, or if there's already a little gap, they'll see light through there, and instead of blocking it up, they might decide to chew away and make another entrance area. So you can block that up if you like. A little bit of steel wool or the stainless steel dish scrubber or anything like that, you can poke in there, and they'll then propolis that up, and it will not be an entrance anymore if it's causing an issue. So it's really genetics whether they chew boxes or not.
The wood chewing bees.
Yeah, was there another part to that question?
Yeah, so already done a split.
Yep.
And now it looks really crowded again, so just wondering, would it be time to do another split? Saying there's lots of bees in the window. Down in Foster, so down south of here.
Okay, fantastic. Great to hear your bees are doing well. Now, so you're looking in the windows of your hive, and this one is a little bit low in numbers. You can see the comb surface. You can see a lot of honey there. We could do with harvesting some. Just a note on that with the hive beetles at the moment. Just harvest a few frames and leave the rest. Too much mess to clean up will take the bees away from their chores of keeping the hive beetles under check. So minimise disturbance or minimise other jobs for the bees at the moment in this area. But you're down south where your bees are doing well. There's a lot of bees in the window. You've already taken a split, well done. You've got a lot of bees in the window there, and you're wondering whether to take a second split. And the answer is yes, you certainly can. If you're looking in the windows, you can't see the comb, you're looking at the entrance and there's a lot of bees starting to beard, then they'll probably, you might get a late swarm, a summertime swarm, if you don't either add more space in the hive or take a split. So swarm is their natural split where half of them will go and find a new place to set up a new residence. So if you want to get ahead of the curve, which is a great idea, and especially in the springtime, it's really important. They're much more likely to swarm in the spring, but as you say, they're really crowded. You might like to take another split or add another brood box or add another honey super, anything to refresh some space in the hive for the queen to keep laying. Harvesting honey is a great idea too if your hive's really crowded, because that way they can move honey from down in the brood box up into your flow frames and free up some cells for the queen to lay. If there's nowhere for the queen to lay and everything's full in the hive, that can trigger your bees to swarm, and you might lose half your bees, you get a weaker colony for a while, and so on. So yes, take a split. You're still in good time. We're here in our summer to take another split, and if you don't want another hive, then somebody else surely will, and you'll be helping them get started in bees.
See, Andrew's wondering, like, what are your thoughts on, if it's a bit of a bad season and it's a bit of a tough time for beekeepers at the moment, as a brand new beekeeper, what do you think is better? Is it better to start, or should they maybe wait till next year to start a hive?
Okay, that choice is up to you. It is a time where bees do need more care, and we need enough beekeepers to look after enough bees to keep our whole pollination system going and so on. So I think it's fantastic for those people that are really getting into it and looking after bees. And it's not like chickens where you need to feed them and lock them up every day, but right now, looking after a beehive on the east coast of Australia, particularly where we are, if you drive 5 hours south, they've already been through this phase. It's particularly here, and soon it'll be in southern Queensland, where it's a bit more demanding to keep your bees alive. But we do have a lot of resources for you if you want to jump in and give it a go on how to manage both the hive beetles, as we've been talking about today, and Varroa, which is the new pest we're all learning a lot about.
Georgie's wondering, without bee cedar in the world, do you think we would not have such a green world?
You know, it's interesting. If you start to really dive into the ramifications of sudden bee loss, let's say if we lost all of our pollinators, be European honeybees and any other pollinating bees, then we're in serious trouble. This plant can no longer set seed, and so many other plants, and so many plants that we rely on, and things do start to unravel. Lucky for us, there's more than one pollinator. We've got the European honeybee, which humans are very reliant on with their agricultural pursuits. We just don't have a pollinator like it. A single pumping hive can pollinate 50 million flowers a day, and that is just incredible. If we lose Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, then we lose serious amounts of pollination and serious amounts of food production. And if you go, oh yeah, don't really need those things that are pollinated, think about coffee, think about wine, think about chocolate, and then people start getting worried. You don't want to lose, you know, a third of the food types on the supermarket shelf, I guess. But it's beyond that, as you say. It's an unraveling when our world can no longer keep the pollinators alive. But we do have a lot of native pollinators. I was filming a beautiful blue-banded bee on the flowers yesterday here, and we've got the Tetragonula carbonaria bees, our native sugar bag bee. We've got lots of resin bees. We've got lots of the leaf cutter bees and so on. And if you're interested in those, you can have a look at our little pollinator houses, which are made for an educational and fundraising piece for those native species. So native species are great to look after and super important. Obviously, the forest here survived without the European honeybee, so it's not necessarily dependent on the European honeybee for pollination. It's actually humans and our agricultural pursuits that do really depend on the European honeybee, Apis mellifera.
Michelle, lucky Michelle got a flow hive for Christmas, so pretty excited. And just wondering, what are the chances of a swarm just going into the hive, or is that like less than 1% chance?
Okay, what you're talking about there is a bait hive. So you can set up the base, you can set up the brood box, you've got your inner cover, you've got your gabled roof, don't worry about the super. And put your wooden frames in there. Now, if you are near a lot of hives, let's say next door there's 20 hives and it's springtime, the chances actually are quite high if you position your hive 6 to 12 feet off the ground and near those hives in the springtime, that a swarm will temporarily land, go on a boating process. All the scout bees will be measuring cavities, including your hive that might be sitting in a tree at your place, and you may just find that a swarm moves right into your hive and you can start like that. However, if you don't have a whole lot of hives near you, and it becomes quite unlikely that a swarm will find your hive and just move right in. So you're much better off buying what's called a nucleus off a bee breeder. It's probably the easiest way. Going a little mini hive, you go and pick it up, you put it in your yard. On a nice warm sunny day of your choice, you get in your bee suit, get out your smoker, transfer them into the brood box like this. Make sure you're putting the other frames in on the edges, look after them, and they'll grow from there. Or taking a split from a friend is a great way to go as well. We've got all of these, we've got a lot of videos showing you how to do that. If you look up our channels, we've also got the beekeeper.org, which is a dedicated online training course that gets rave reviews. Experts from all around the world have contributed to that. So it's not just our knowledge from here, but a global knowledge of beekeeping. It's free to try and also a great fundraiser for the bees. So have a look at that, thebeekeeper.org.
Right. So Cody's got a super lifter question. Just wondering, will the super lifter work if your boxes are slightly irregular, different sizes, even if it's like a few centimetres out between the boxes?
We've designed it with a reasonable amount of tolerance. If your boxes are really out of whack, then what I recommend doing is either just levering them up and putting them closer to in line, or using a builder's sash clamp to clamp it up and pull the boxes in line. But if you've got different size boxes with a really big difference, I guess you may need to make some little adjustments. So let's just have a look here. We'll see if we can get our smoker going again. The super lifter's in the bag. Now this hive, whoever put this back together last time, left the queen excluder hanging right out like that. So there's an example of the things we're thinking about with the 7-year development of the super lifter, trying to make it as versatile as possible and you can handle a reasonable tolerance of boxes overlapping. But if you're say a centimetre difference, well then bees might be starting to escape, but they shouldn't. Let's say a centimetre difference, then all you'd need to do to fix that up would be to back out the load screws with your drill or your key to adjust it so your super lifter can still work. So I'll get this smoker going again. It's run out of fuel. I'll just load it up and I'll give you a demonstration of the lifter while we're here. And we should put that little hive back together as well. We might do that while we get the smoke into a hive, and we'll put the hive back together and then I'll show you the lifter. Been talking too long, the smoke has gone out. Use a blowtorch to fast track that. And loosely pack it if you don't want it to go out. Now we can add a bit of smoke to this hive here, and I'll give you a demonstration of how out of whack the boxes can be and the tolerance we've built in to try and make it as versatile as possible, whether you've got Langstroth hives, conventional hive, flow hives, or a mixture. We really wanted to make it. So there's a little trick. If your smoker's not going too well, sometimes just putting this little tube here that catches the airflow will help. There we go, it's catching on. So while we wait for this hive to change gears or change modes, we've just given it a little bit of smoke. Let's put this hive back together. It's been open a long time. It's only a tiny little colony. We don't want to stress it out. So we'll make sure that brood nest is pushed together like that. And quick recap, to save this hive from hive beetle, we took any affected frames and any frames on the edges that were just honey and pollen away. Counterintuitive, but what it does is gives the bees a fighting chance against the beetles because they can focus then on those central frames. So when the bee numbers are low, take away the super full of honey, take away the frames on the edge or cut the comb out, and that will often save your hive from severe hive beetle attack. Okay, that goes back on there. We had our chucks cloth, we may as well put that back on. So that was a bit of an experiment to show you guys if you do want to use the chucks cloth hive beetle method, any extra methods for catching hive beetles. Good at the moment. We've got our tray down here. Just a thing with the tray, when you are using it to catch beetles, you don't want any bees in there. Brush the bees out of underneath the screen if they're under there before you put the tray in. Tray goes in, then this is important, you want to make sure it is pushed up against the tray so that there's not a gap for bees to work their way up into that oil. And our roof goes back on. Now, super lifter. So here's our super lifter here. The question is, if your boxes are out of line, will it work?
Or different sizes as well.
Or different sizes that aren't quite matching up. The answer is yes, you will find our original classic compared to our Flow Hive 2. There's a couple of mils difference if you're sharing it between the back and front, and it works fine for that. Beyond that, if there's bigger differences, then you'll be able to make it work by just adjusting these screws a bit to make sure it can still fit on. So have a look at this. We've got the excluder hanging out. Wow, look at kangaroo paws on the artwork. It's pretty cool. There's an Australian native flower there. Okay, so lower brackets onto our load point screws. Notice how we put this bracket below the queen excluder. So even if it's left hanging out like that, you can then still put on your lower bracket. So that was an important piece of the puzzle, was to make sure we could get around the excluder. Upper brackets come up like this. Now we're on to our upper load point screws. Now I'm going to purposefully put these boxes out of line to show you how far out of line we can go and what to do about it if it doesn't fit. So we've set up the lifter now, and oh, these bees are a little bit toey actually. We'll just give them a moment. And what I wanted to show you is if we move this hive out of line, how the super lifter can still work, and if it can't quite work, what to do about it. Okay. Keep the questions coming in while we do this show and tell.
Yeah, and maybe I should mention we've got, we've got Tammy, and Tammy's tuning in from Florida, and Tammy uses the bottom tray with soapy water, and she puts the diatomaceous earth around the dirt, and the hive beetles are way down. So that's what Tammy's doing in Florida to help with the hive beetle there.
Okay, in Florida you've got a similar climate, humid in the hotter months, and you've got a lot of hive beetles. So that's a good tip. Any more hive beetle tips, bring it on. Some people use nematodes, apparently, that will attack the larvae under the ground. Diatomaceous earth around the hive. One thing you've got to be careful about with the diatomaceous earth is that it doesn't get into the hive. I'm sure you're aware of that, because it will harm the bees as well. Okay. And soapy water is something that some people use too. So we have used it in the past. Be interesting to see what the humidity effects have on the bees. So now you've set up your lifter, you're opening the hive up like this. Now, if I can straighten up that excluder now, which is important to do because it's so far out of line that the queen could get up in this corner. So I'm going to realign that. But what I wanted to do was purposefully put the box out of line. So if I pull it back, can I do it? I mean, we've designed the lifter. There's a hive beetle there. Sorry, beetle, but you're not welcome here. I actually can't make it get too far out of line because of the way the lifter is set. But if they were now out of line this way, what you'd find is it may be hard to get this upper bracket to seat. You can either just give it a little lift with it partially on and then down again to help realign your boxes to save all of the chiseling, or you can wind out this lower screw a bit or the upper screw, either one, to allow that to then get on and lift with your configuration with out of line boxes.
Fantastic. Now Cedar, just wondering, that's right. So we've got someone who's just having a few issues trying to get the bees to take to the flow frames, and we probably get asked this question on our Facebook Live, and you give good tips on how to encourage your bees to start using the flow frames.
Yes, so there is a few tricks if you're getting impatient. I find we don't do anything here, we just put the flow frames on, and when the bees are ready they start to use it and cover them in wax, make them their own, and store the honey. However, if you're finding your hive is slow or you're getting impatient with that, because you do need the colony to be strong and there to be lots of flowers for them to really store honey up here in a big way. So when those things don't align and you want to see some action on the flow frames earlier, or you're wanting to get a jump on a season, you're worried that you've got such a short season that you want to give it its best chance to store honey, then you can put some wax on the flow frames. Now, do not pour melted wax into the flow frames or you'll jam up the mechanism. What you want to do is just paint some on the outside surfaces, or even easier is to scrape some burr-comb straight off your brood frames. If they are ready for the super, they're probably building up a bit of wax on top of the frames here. Scrape it off, you're after the wax, not so much the honey. If it's got honey as well, it doesn't really matter, but you're after the wax. You've got your hive tool, scrape it off, mash it into the surface of the flow frame, then put that frame on the window side here, and you can enjoy watching them tear that wax down and redistribute it in that local area, starting to join the flow frame parts together, starting to create their wax bridges, and eventually, when there is a strong colony and enough nectar around, you'll see them starting to store some nectar there. So that's a little trick you can use. There is other things that people do. Some people will mix it around so the flow frame box is down the bottom temporarily, so the bees are really going through it, making it their own, and then switch it back again. That's an unusual one. But generally we find you do nothing when your bees are ready, and there's a lot of bees in the window, and there's a lot of flowers. They will really get into it and wax them all up and start depositing their nectar.
Right. Oh, this is a good one, Seeds, from the beautiful Shoalhaven area, which is south, quite a bit south of here. They have Varroa and small hive beetle, and they're checking their pest tray every couple of days. There's lots of beetles and Varroa, but I've also noticed pupae that have been taken out of the cells, and the question is, would this be Varroa hygienic behaviour?
Quite possibly. There's there's a great book coming out of Europe on how to breed for Varroa resistance in your own small apiary, and one of the key things is looking out for that behaviour of torn up pupae, and that is the bees uncapping and removing partially formed honeybees that are affected with Varroa. Now, that is a trait that in the wild does allow a honey bee colony to survive with Varroa with no intervention. However, what you could be seeing also is the effect of hive beetle larvae worming their way through the brood frames, damaging them, and the bees are tearing them down and ditching the pupae as well. Either way, it's good hygienic behaviour, probably for both beetle damage and for Varroa. Keep an eye on it. If it's getting away and there's like just extreme amounts of it and you're starting to see hive beetle larvae dropping, then you've probably got a hive beetle attack or serious situation you need to get in there and manage, like we've been talking about on the start of this live stream.
And do you think, Cedar, with a hive beetle infestation, can it make the honey a bit blackish and grainy?
The hive beetle larvae do defecate in the honey as they worm their way through. It smells like rotten orange in the end as it starts to ferment, and it's not suitable for human consumption once the hive beetle larvae have seriously attacked your honey frames. It doesn't really go black. The sign that they are really getting, the hive beetle are getting away in the hive, is that slimy coating on the surface of both honey frames or brood frames. Okay, thanks so much for all of your great questions. We've covered a lot today, and just a big encouragement for those on the east coast of Australia to not only make sure Varroa is periodically managed to keep the numbers low, but stay onto the hive beetle to keep your hives alive, and make sure you're trapping them with the pest management tray down the bottom or any other methods you have. And bees need a lot of help at the moment, so big thank you to all of you out there who are putting in effort, really keeping their colonies alive, because we want those genetics to be going through to next season where things will get more manageable, and it'd be a shame to lose some really good genetics now when next year, as we were talking about, Varroa resistant genetics might be present in your apiary, but they just can't get on top of it now because things are just out of hand. But next year and beyond, we may be able to then selectively breed and get to the holy grail, which is the bees looking after themselves. Thanks for watching. Same time next week. Thanks for all of your great questions. See you next week.